140 million Americans are drinking water through pipes that are older than their grandparents. In the last 30 days, water systems in Chicago, Detroit, and Atlanta have experienced catastrophic main breaks that left entire neighborhoods without water for over a week. That is just January. The rate of failure is accelerating faster than cities can repair. Over 7 billion gallons of treated drinking water are lost every single day through cracked and corroded pipes buried beneath America's streets. A fire truck responding to an emergency cannot guarantee there will be water pressure when it arrives. Hospitals are installing backup water storage tanks. And the terrifying part is not the breaks you can see. It is the 2.2 million miles of underground water pipes that are quietly failing right now, beneath your feet. But here is the detail that tells the real story. On Tuesday morning at 6:47 a.m., residents of Chicago's Lincoln Park neighborhood heard a sound like thunder coming from underground. Within minutes, Lakeshore Drive had become a river. A 48-inch cast iron water main installed in 1896 had exploded with the force of 180 pounds per square inch, sending a geyser 40 feet into the air. The rupture created a sinkhole 30 feet wide that swallowed 2 cars. Traffic backed up for 8 miles. Over 50,000 residents lost water service. But that 127-year-old pipe was not an anomaly. It was exactly what engineers had been warning about for decades. To understand how America arrived at this moment, you have to rewind to 1945. After World War II, the federal government launched the largest infrastructure building program in human history. Between 1945 and 1980, cities installed over 1 million miles of water pipes. Cast iron, ductile iron, concrete. Most were designed to last 75 to 100 years. The pipes installed in 1945 began reaching their design life in 2020. The pipes installed in 1980 will hit their expiration date in 2055. But here is the problem that is not making headlines. The math is broken. The American Water Works Association estimates that replacing America's aging water infrastructure will cost $1.7 trillion over the next 25 years. That is $68 billion per year. But municipalities are currently spending just $18 billion annually on water infrastructure. The funding gap is $50 billion every single year. At the current rate of investment, it would take 94 years to replace the pipes that need to be replaced in the next 25 years. The deterioration is outpacing the repairs by almost 4 to 1. The consequences are already cascading through the system. In Detroit, the aging water network loses 30% of its treated water before it reaches customers. That is 50 million gallons per day disappearing into the ground. The city's emergency repair crews respond to an average of 23 main breaks every single day. In Jackson, Mississippi, the water treatment plant failed so completely in 2022 that 180,000 residents went without safe drinking water for over a month. The National Guard had to distribute bottled water. In Flint, Michigan, corroded pipes leached lead into the drinking water of 100,000 people for 18 months before officials acknowledged the crisis. But the individual stories reveal a deeper system in collapse. Maria Santos, a mother of 3 in East Cleveland, wakes up every morning at 5 a.m. to fill bathtubs and containers with water because her neighborhood loses pressure every day between 7 a.m. and 6 p.m. The century-old pipes cannot maintain adequate flow during peak demand. Her children brush their teeth with bottled water. She boils tap water for cooking. The city has issued 47 boil water advisories in the past 2 years. Michael Chen, who owns a restaurant in Atlanta's Buckhead district, installed a $15,000 water storage system after losing service for 72 hours during a main break last summer. The rupture occurred on a Thursday morning. His restaurant remained closed until the following Monday. He lost $8,000 in revenue and had to throw away $3,000 worth of food. The break happened on Peachtree Road, a major commercial corridor, because a 60-year-old pipe finally succumbed to pressure variations it was never designed to handle. Dr. Sarah Mitchell, Chief of Emergency Medicine at Presbyterian Hospital in Charlotte, now requires her staff to maintain a 48-hour supply of sterile water for surgeries. The hospital's medical campus sits above a network of pipes installed in the 1960s. 2 years ago, a main break contaminated the water supply for 6 hours during a busy Friday night in the trauma unit. We cannot guarantee that water will flow from the tap during a medical emergency, she told local news reporters. That is unacceptable in a developed nation. And the failure is accelerating. The rate of water main breaks in American cities has increased by 27% since 2010. Chicago experiences 400 to 500 major breaks per year. New York City reports 500 to 600. Los Angeles sees 300 to 400. Philadelphia documents 800 to 900. These numbers represent only the breaks large enough to require street closures and emergency repairs. Thousands of smaller leaks go undetected for months, slowly bleeding treated water into the soil. Here is the problem that urban planners do not want to discuss publicly. Most American water systems were built using a hub and spoke model, with large treatment facilities feeding water through progressively smaller pipes to end users. This design assumes that pipes will be replaced on a rolling schedule every 75 to 100 years. But replacement requires excavating streets, disrupting traffic, coordinating with multiple utilities, and obtaining permits that can take months to process. The average cost to replace a mile of large diameter water main in an urban environment now exceeds $2.5 million. Multiply that by 2.2 million miles, and the scope becomes clear. The replacement cannot keep pace with the deterioration. Climate change is making the crisis worse. Extreme temperature swings cause underground pipes to expand and contract beyond their design tolerances. The polar vortex that hit Texas in February 2021 burst thousands of pipes simultaneously. The heat dome that covered the Pacific Northwest in 2021 caused concrete pipes to crack from thermal stress. Increased rainfall overwhelms aging storm systems, which then infiltrate water mains through corroded joints. Extended droughts cause soil to shift and settle, placing additional stress on buried infrastructure. But the real story is not weather. It is the convergence of multiple systems reaching their breaking point at the same time. The Environmental Protection Agency estimates that 15% of America's water treatment plants are operating beyond their design capacity. The infrastructure that processes the water is aging as fast as the infrastructure that delivers it. Chemical treatment systems installed in the 1970s and 1980s are failing at rates that exceed replacement schedules. Pumping stations are operating with equipment that is 30 to 40 years old, well beyond manufacturers' recommended service life. Local governments face impossible choices. In cities like Baltimore, Cleveland, and St. Louis, population decline since 1960 has left sprawling water networks serving fewer customers. The revenue base has shrunk, but the infrastructure footprint remains the same. Maintaining 1,000 miles of pipe for 300,000 residents costs more per capita than maintaining the same system for 600,000 residents. Cities cannot afford to abandon infrastructure because remaining residents would lose service. They cannot afford to maintain infrastructure because the customer base is too small to generate sufficient revenue. The federal government has not filled the gap. The Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act allocated $55 billion for water infrastructure over 5 years. That is $11 billion per year, still $57 billion short of the annual need. State Revolving Fund. Programs provide low-interest loans, but municipalities must still repay the debt. Small and medium-sized cities with limited tax bases cannot qualify for large enough loans to address systematic failures. Meanwhile, the timeline is compressing. Every day that passes without replacing aging infrastructure, the eventual cost increases. Pipes that could have been replaced for $1 million per mile in 2010 now cost $2.5 million per mile to replace in 2024. Emergency repairs cost 3 to 5 times more than scheduled replacements. Service disruptions create cascading economic losses. The longer cities wait, the more expensive the solution becomes. The human consequences are no longer theoretical. In 2023, water service interruptions in American cities lasted an average of 8.7 hours per incident, compared to 4.2 hours in 2010. The duration is increasing because repairs are becoming more complex. When a 100-year-old pipe breaks, it often damages adjacent pipes, electrical systems, gas lines, and telecommunications infrastructure. Fixing one problem creates 3 others. Emergency rooms in cities with aging water infrastructure report a 15% increase in gastrointestinal illnesses during summer months when water quality fluctuates. School districts in Detroit and Cleveland now budget $2 million annually for bottled water during periods when tap water fails safety tests. Real estate values in neighborhoods with frequent service interruptions have declined by an average of 8% compared to areas with reliable water service. But the secondary effects are more dangerous than the primary failures. Fire departments in cities with deteriorating water infrastructure cannot guarantee adequate pressure for firefighting operations. Insurance companies have begun requiring commercial property owners in certain zip codes to install private water storage systems or face higher premiums. Manufacturing facilities that require reliable water for cooling and processing are relocating away from cities with unstable water networks. The private sector is responding faster than government. Companies like Nestle, Coca-Cola, and PepsiCo are investing billions in private water treatment and distribution systems for their manufacturing facilities. Technology companies, including Amazon, Google, and Microsoft, are building data centers only in regions with guaranteed water availability and redundant supply systems. They have concluded that public water infrastructure cannot support their operations reliably. Wealthy neighborhoods and commercial districts are installing private water storage and treatment systems. Luxury residential developments now include community water tanks and backup pumps as standard amenities. The inequality of access is becoming geographic and economic. Those who can afford backup systems will have water. Those who cannot will not. And the failure is spreading. Cities that currently have adequate water pressure and quality are experiencing warning signs. Phoenix reports that 40% of its underground infrastructure will reach end-of-life status within the next 15 years. Denver documents increasing numbers of small leaks in pipes installed during the city's growth boom in the 1970s and 1980s. Seattle has identified 200 miles of pipes that require replacement within the next 10 years, but has funding to replace only 50 miles. The cascading failure extends beyond water delivery. Sewage systems, which often run parallel to water systems, are aging at the same rate. When water mains break, they can overwhelm nearby sewer pipes, causing backups and environmental contamination. The two infrastructure networks are interdependent. Failure in one system accelerates failure in the other. But here is what engineers are not saying publicly. The current approach to water infrastructure maintenance is reactive, not preventative. Cities wait for pipes to break before replacing them. But by the time a pipe ruptures catastrophically, it has been 70 leaking and losing pressure for months or years. The damage has already spread to adjacent systems. Reactive maintenance is 5 to 7 times more expensive than preventive replacement, but cash-strapped cities cannot afford to replace pipes that are still technically functional. This creates a fiscal death spiral. As infrastructure failures increase, emergency repair costs consume larger portions of municipal budgets. Less money remains available for preventive maintenance. More pipes reach the breaking point. Emergency costs increase further. Cities fall deeper into infrastructure debt. Services deteriorate. Property values decline. Tax revenues decrease. The cycle accelerates. Federal officials acknowledge the crisis, but have not proposed solutions that match its scale. The $1.7 trillion price tag for water infrastructure replacement exceeds the annual budget of most federal agencies. It would require the largest domestic infrastructure investment since the interstate highway system. But unlike highways, water infrastructure is owned and operated by over 50,000 individual water utilities, most serving fewer than 3,300 customers. There is no centralized planning mechanism, no federal oversight authority, no coordination between systems. Private companies are beginning to acquire failing municipal water systems. When cities cannot afford to maintain water infrastructure, private utility companies offer to purchase the assets and guarantee service in exchange for rate increases. Residents often have no choice but to accept privatization because the alternative is losing water service entirely. American Water Works Company, the largest private water utility in the United States, has acquired over 40 municipal systems in the past 5 years. The trend toward privatization is accelerating as more cities face infrastructure bankruptcy. But privatization creates new problems. Private water companies must generate profits for shareholders while maintaining infrastructure that municipalities could not afford to maintain. This requires either significant rate increases or reduced service levels. In many cases, both occur. Private companies are also less accountable to local communities than municipal utilities. Rate disputes and service complaints must be resolved through state utility commissions rather than city councils. The water crisis is happening now. It is not a future problem requiring future solutions. In the time it took you to read this script, approximately 50,000 gallons of treated drinking water leaked into the ground through cracked pipes in American cities. Emergency repair crews are working in Chicago, Detroit, Atlanta, Cleveland, Baltimore, and dozens of other cities to restore service after main breaks that occurred in the past 24 hours. The math has not changed. America needs to replace $1.7 trillion worth of water infrastructure in the next 25 years. Currently available funding covers less than 25% of that requirement. The deterioration is accelerating. The cost is increasing. The timeline is compressing. You are living above a failing system that cannot be fixed with current resources and current approaches. The question is not whether America's water infrastructure will fail. The question is how much of it will fail before we decide that reliable drinking water is worth the investment required to guarantee it. Every day the decision is delayed, the stakes get higher, and the solution gets more expensive. The water is running out, and time is running out faster.